Amara rushed into Momo's dorm and looked around for her, but she wasn't there. She immediately took out her cell phone and dialed her number. But it didn't go through. She stood there wondering where she could have gone. She walked over and checked out her timetable, realizing that her classes were done for the day. She rushed out again and headed to the cafeteria to find her. Meanwhile, Momo sat with Ming in his office as she looked at him, waiting for him to reveal what he had found out, and Ming told her that from what he had discovered looking at the pictures she had left behind, there was discoloration on the lips and skin, and it suggested poisoning, suffocation, or lack of oxygen, and that the girl showed no signs of progressive illness that could precede heart failure. Looking at Momo, he stated that he couldn't diagnose fully from a photograph and wasn't even sure those results would still stand if he examined the patient physically because that was the most important. He added that to get the truth he needed an autopsy and to be in the same room with the patient so he could fully examine her, and that so far that was what he had discovered. Momo, looking at Ming, asked him if that meant her heart was stopped intentionally. Ming remained silent for a moment and told her he couldn't say that just yet, and that even though the photograph diagnosis proved possible, he couldn't confirm it since he had not examined the patient physically. Momo, however, held his hands excitedly and stated that meant May and James did something to their daughter and were now after Amara's heart, and that if she could find out what they did, she could have a solid case against them and stop them. Ming looked at her and told her to stop putting herself at risk, and that she was too young to be involving herself in such things, and that if May and James found out they might not only want Amara's heart, they might hurt her as well because she knew too much. He advised her to stop investigating and find another student-friendly topic for her project, because what she was doing was dangerous. Momo told him that she was in too deep for her to stop now. She smiled, her hands still intertwined with Ming's without noticing. Ming slowly looked down at their hands still clutched together and immediately released his hand and stood up, looking at her. He stated that he had to go do his rounds. Momo also stood up and stated that she needed to go treat herself with the best noodles in town just for breaking such a difficult case. They both walked out together, and Jan, who had been standing by the door listening immediately, hid in a corner and watched them as they walked out. She immediately walked into Ming's office and grabbed the pictures from his desk and placed them in her bag. She grabbed her cell phone and dialed May's number and told her she wanted to meet her and that she had something that might capture her attention. With that, she hung up and walked out. Momo sat alone in her favorite small noodle restaurant, savoring each bite, a quiet smile tugging at her lips as she thought about how close she was to helping Amara, and how this would be the best investigative journalism project she had ever undertaken. She reached for her cell phone, intending to call Ming to remind him to keep the photos safe, realizing she had left them in his office, only to discover the battery was dead. Slightly disappointed, she tucked it back into her bag, grabbed her notepad, and began jotting down notes to aid her investigation. As she sat there, engrossed in her thoughts, her eyes caught an elderly woman struggling with her luggage outside. Concern immediately stirred in Momo, and she rose from her seat to help. Standing beside the woman, she asked if she was okay and whether she needed assistance. The woman smiled politely, insisting she was fine, though her struggle was evident. Momo persisted, offering to carry the luggage and asking where she was headed. The woman mentioned she was trying to find a nearby Uber. Momo, smiling, insisted she would help. They walked together, and the woman praised Momo for her kindness, calling her genuinely friendly. Momo waved off the praise, saying it was simply normal to respect elders and help them. When they reached the car, Momo moved to open the bonnet and place the luggage inside. Suddenly, the woman lifted her walking stick and struck Momo on the head. Momo collapsed, and the undercover driver swiftly grabbed her, placing her in the car. Both the woman and the driver got in, and the car sped off with Momo. Meanwhile, Amara returned to the house, still attempting to reach Momo by phone, but failing. Liwei, who had been sitting with Master Shen, immediately rose and approached her, concern etched across his face. He asked if she was okay and whether she had managed to contact Momo. Amara shook her head, her voice tight with worry, confessing her fear that something had happened to her friend. At the mention of Momo's name, Master Shen rose sharply, his expression hardening, his eyes narrowing as he moved closer. He demanded to know exactly what Amara had said. Amara explained that her friend had not answered any calls and must have been investigating May and James, and she feared they might have harmed her. Liwei added that May had recently come to his office, claiming she found a pen in her house, which Amara immediately recognized as Momo's. Master Shen's expression darkened further, his voice icy and commanding, moving closer with fury in his eyes. He asked if Amara had searched the entire school, and she nodded, adding that the last person to contact Momo was Ming. Panicked, Amara begged liwei to call Ming, hoping he might know Momo's whereabouts or if they were together. Master Shen's sharp, commanding voice cut through her anxiety. He told them there was no need to call. He would go himself and interrogate Ming directly, in case he had been involved in taking his daughter hostage. Both Amara and liwei stared at him, stunned. Liwei asked if he had just said Momo was his daughter. Master Shen, urgent and resolute, insisted there was no time to waste, promising to explain later, and told liwei to send him Ming's location immediately. Liwei stepped closer, assuring Master Shen he would accompany him and take him to Ming's clinic. Amara stated that she was going as well, but liwei's firm gaze and commanding tone stopped her. He told her to stay home, that it was too dangerous. She argued that Momo was her friend, but liwei, unwavering, reassured her that he understood her worry and that he and Master Shen would find her friend. She only needed to wait. Master Shen, impatient and tense, declared there was no time to waste and bolted toward the door, liwei following swiftly behind. Amara remained standing, frozen, her body trembling with fear at all the possibilities, silently praying they would find Momo safe. Master Shen and liwei rushed into Ming's clinic, their expressions stern and determined, every step echoing the urgency of finding Momo. They made their way straight into Ming's office, where he was seated with a patient. The moment he noticed them, his eyes shifted from liwei to Master Shen, a flicker of unease crossing his face as he asked what was going on. Master Shen's voice was firm, cutting through the room as he asked if Ming had seen Momo. Ming, still uneasy, glanced at him and replied that it was disrespectful to barge into his office while he was with a patient just to ask such a question. Master Shen's voice turned icy, commanding, and stated that he should answer if he valued his life. His eyes flicked to the patient, noting she didn't seem in immediate danger, and he mentioned she could wait while they handled a matter far more urgent. Ming opened his mouth to protest, but liwei, standing rigid beside Master Shen, leaned in, urgency threading his voice, telling him they truly needed his help and that he must cooperate. The patient hesitated, then, sensing the tension, quietly excused herself and left. Ming looked back at them, wariness in his eyes, and asked what exactly was going on. Master Shen's gaze bore into him, sharp and unyielding, and he asked again if Ming had seen Momo, explaining that he was the last person who had called her, and they needed to know if they had met and what was discussed. Ming hesitated, glancing at liwei with a flicker of confusion, asking who the scary man was. Liwei's voice tightened, urgent and low. He explained that they suspected Momo had been taken. Master Shen's tone was cold, final, leaving no room for doubt. It wasn't suspicion. She had indeed been taken. Ming swallowed hard, then admitted he had met Momo, that she had called him. They had met briefly, and she left afterward, never contacting him again. Liwei stepped closer, his gaze unwavering, pressing for details. What had they talked about? Had she mentioned anything dangerous or going somewhere? Ming hesitated, then said it was confidential between him and Momo. Master Shen's jaw tightened, fury brimming, but liwei placed a hand on his arm, signaling he would handle it. Liwei leaned in, his voice steady but urgent as he stated that it was a matter of life and death. He asked if Momo had told him anything about May and James and the heart situation. Ming froze, then nodded reluctantly. Liwei pressed further, and Ming revealed that she had brought photographs of May and James's daughter, asking for his help to diagnose them medically, and that was exactly what he had done. Master Shen's voice cut through sharply. He asked Ming if was the one who tipped off May. Ming's expression was firm, defensive. He hadn't. He explained that he had tried to warn Momo to stop because it was dangerous. Liwei's eyes scanned him and asked him if hadn't told anyone else. How had May found out? Ming's frustration was evident. He admitted he didn't know and that only he and Momo had been aware. No third party. Master Shen's dark eyes scanned him again, searching for any trace of dishonesty. Liwei glanced at Master Shen and said firmly that Ming was his friend and he was being honest. He knew him well. Master Shen's expression hardened, his voice low and deadly, as he affirmed that May had Momo. He leaned in closer, a vow in his tone, promising to find her, even if it meant going to May's house himself. Without another word, he bolted toward the door. Liwei moved to follow, but Ming stopped him, voice anxious, asking what exactly was happening, and asked again who the scary man was. Liwei didn't answer. He simply offered a terse apology for disturbing his work and hurried after Master Shen. Meanwhile, Amara sat at home, her body trembling, panic coursing through her as she gripped her cell phone, trying once again to call Momo. The calls went unanswered, and her mind raced with worry, hoping that Liwei and Master Shen had found her friend and that nothing had happened, that she was safe with Ming. She even imagined the ridiculous possibility that Momo had been distracted by Ming and turned off her phone, but the thought barely comforted her as fear clawed at her chest. The door suddenly swung open, and Liwei and Master Shen entered without a word. Their movements were deliberate, urgent, and their eyes carried the same intensity as their expressions, cold, focused, and ready for battle. They headed straight to the secret room, and Amara, heart hammering, rose immediately, desperate to understand what had happened. She walked in, and her eyes fell on them, their faces burning with controlled fury, their hands already loading their guns. They looked as if they were prepared for war, and Amara froze, the weight of the moment pressing down on her as the reality of the danger surrounding Momo hit her fully. Amara moved closer and looked at Liwei, who was busy loading his gun, his expression cold, and she asked him what was going on and if they had found where Momo was and if she was safe. Liwei turned and looked at her and told her that they believed she had been taken hostage and that she had been investigating May and James's daughter's case and must have uncovered something. Amara felt her heart stop, her whole body weakening as she started crying and panicking, whispering, "What if they kill her? What if they do something to her?" Liwei looked at her and told her they wouldn't let that happen. Amara, panicking and trembling, said that she knew what May was capable of and that maybe they had already done something to her, that maybe they had hurt her or, worse, killed her. And as she spoke, her voice trembled and she started sobbing, saying it was her fault, that she shouldn't have told Momo about May and James, that she should have kept it a secret, and that if something happened to her, she would never forgive herself. Liwei tried to talk to her, but it was as if her mind was running wild, and she didn't see him standing right there trying to calm her. Liwei, his voice firm, called her name and held her hands, telling her to look at him. Amara continued crying, and Liwei, his voice steady, called her babe, telling her to look at him, his eyes locking with hers. He leaned in, his voice sharp, asking her if she had forgotten who her man was and what he was capable of. Still keeping his eyes on her, he stated that he had told her that as long as he was around and alive, he wouldn't let anything happen to her, and that included the people she cherished the most. Leaning even closer, his eyes still on her, he told her that he and Master Shen were going to find Momo and bring her back intact. Amara, calming down, looked at him, and Liwei told her that if she cried like that, it was as if she was underestimating him and not trusting him fully, and that he could never let anything happen to her or anyone close to her. He asked her if she trusted him, and Amara nodded. Master Shen, now ready, looked at Liwei and told him they needed to go. Liwei looked at Amara again and wiped off her tears, leaning in and told her to be a good girl and wait for him, that they would bring Momo back. He kissed her forehead gently and walked out with Master Shen as Amara followed them out. Meanwhile, Liwei accelerated the speed of his car as Master Shen sat beside him, eyes glued to his laptop, navigating through the CCTV cameras in May's house that he had hacked into. Liwei glanced at him, asking if she was in the house, but Master Shen, still focused on the laptop, didn't answer. Frustration etched deep on Liwei's face as he swore under his breath, thinking about how time was slipping away and how if they didn't get to Momo in time, something terrible might happen to her. He focused on the road, glancing again at Master Shen, pressing him for answers. Master Shen, clearly frustrated, stated that she wasn't there and that they hadn't kept her in their house. Anger surged through him, and he slammed the laptop shut. Liwei pulled the car over and looked at him, asking him to calm down and not act that way. Master Shen, his fury barely contained, shot back that there was no way he could calm down because his daughter was somewhere unknown, and he wasn't even sure if she was still breathing. Liwei's gaze hardened, his voice sharp, telling him to calm down, reminding him that the Master Shen he knew wouldn't panic this way. They would find Momo, and whoever had taken her would pay. He told him not to forget who he was, the smartest man he had ever met, who always found a way despite any circumstances. Liwei added that the panic was understandable because it was his daughter, and she was in danger. But they would find her. They just needed a new strategy, since she wasn't in May and James's house. Master Shen, hearing Liwei's words sink in, took a deep breath and opened his laptop again, looking at Liwei and stating that they should draw up a new strategy. Liwei nodded in agreement, relieved to see him calm down and thinking clearly again. Meanwhile, Amara sat by herself, still panicking, clutching her cell phone in case she got a call from Momo. She couldn't stop thinking about how she wouldn't be able to heal if something happened to her best friend, someone who had always been there for her. She held back tears, thinking about how it was her fault that Momo had ended up in this situation, how she had revealed her problems and involved her. She thought about how, if she had never met Momo or told her those things, she would be safe by now. As she sat there, the doorbell rang. Initially thinking it was Master Shen and Liwei, she immediately ran to the door and opened it, only to be surprised to find Kai standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers and ice cream. She paused, looking at him, and Kai, with a gentle smile, asked if he could come in. Amara hesitated, but Kai told her not to worry, that Liwei had asked him to come over because she was by herself and not in a good state of mind. Amara still hesitated, but Kai took out his cell phone and showed her the text from Liwei, and that's when she opened the door for Kai, who immediately stepped inside. Looking at her, he asked if she was okay and if anything had happened, noticing the redness in her eyes. He moved closer and asked if she had been crying. Amara quickly looked away, insisting that she was okay. She offered him a seat, and they both sat down. Kai told her he had brought ice cream and flowers to make her feel better. Amara nodded, smiled, and thanked him. Kai, clearly curious, asked what exactly was going on, saying that he thought he must be dreaming when Liwei told him to come over because that wasn't like him at all, and the Liwei he knew would never do that. Leaning in, he asked if everything was okay. Amara, careful not to reveal too much, reassured him that everything was fine. Kai smiled and told her he wouldn't ask further questions since he was there to make her feel better. He stood up and handed her the ice cream, telling her to eat it before it melted. Amara took it and looked at it. Kai noticed her hair was loose, held it for her so it won't get dipped into the ice cream. Amara panicked slightly, but Kai told her to relax and that he wouldn't do anything to her. He returned to his seat, watching her as she ate the ice cream. Amara looked at him and remarked that he was a gentleman and that his future girlfriend would be very lucky. Keeping her eyes on him, she asked why he was single. Kai laughed and said that he was a lover boy too much, and when he loved someone, he became like a puppy in love. He laughed again, saying that he was the total opposite of Liwei, who was a more dominant lover, someone who showed love in a firm way, while he was gentler. He added that he wasn't the kind of guy to pin a girl to a wall and claim her as his, that he was more soft, and that girls loved dominant guys, while gentle guys like him often got labeled as boring. Amara told him there were plenty of girls who loved gentle guys, and that he would find someone. Kai leaned in mischievously and asked what about her, what kind of guy she liked. Amara said that as long as someone had a good heart and their energies matched, that was enough. She stood up, stating that she was going to the bathroom. Kai sat for a moment before standing up and walking around the house, scanning everything. His eyes landed on a section of the wall that looked unusual. He moved closer, examining it, and noticed a small switch on the wall. He pressed it, and the wall opened. He stood there, stunned and surprised. Momo slowly opened her eyes, trying to make sense of where she was, her heart hammering as she realized she was tied to a chair in a small, dark room. Panic took over, and she twisted and pulled at the ropes, but it was useless. She screamed for help, her voice trembling as she tried to piece together what had happened, remembering only that she had helped an old woman with her luggage, and then everything else had gone blank. She screamed again, calling for someone to save her, her body shaking uncontrollably as fear took hold. The door creaked open, and a man wearing a mask stepped inside, moving toward her. Momo's body froze, her heart beating faster, praying he wouldn't hurt her. He told her to keep quiet, but she shouted back, asking who he was and what he wanted from her. She insisted she had never wronged anyone, especially him, and demanded to know why this was happening. Her eyes widened when she noticed May walking in, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. May's presence made the room feel smaller, heavier, and Momo's chest tightened. May stood in front of her, her gaze sharp and unyielding, stating she knew exactly what she had done to end up tied to that chair. Momo's heart raced as everything clicked into place. May had discovered her investigation. May moved closer, asking where Momo had gotten the guts to interfere in her business, who had sent her, and whether she was working for liwei. Momo's voice trembled as she shook her head, insisting no one had sent her, that she had only wanted to investigate the story about her daughter in a coma. May closed the distance further. Pressing Momo with the knowledge that she knew, she stated that she was Amara's friend and suggesting she had probably made a deal with Amara to conduct the investigation. Momo's body trembled as tears streamed down her face. May demanded to know what she had discovered, her voice icy and sharp. Momo admitted she had found nothing except the photographs she had taken, and her voice shook as she spoke. James entered quietly, glancing from Momo to May, and commented that she probably knew a lot, but was protecting someone. He suggested they scare her and release her, believing that might be enough to make her stay silent. May moved closer to him, insisting that Momo was friends with Amara and brave enough to have slipped into their highly secured house, which meant letting her go would be pointless. She said they needed to permanently silence her, and James hesitated before May reminded him that he was a man and should not be weak if they wanted to protect themselves. James finally agreed, and May called the masked man to step forward, instructing him to take care of the trash and make sure the body was disposed of completely. Momo sat frozen. her entire body weak, her mind racing as she screamed for help, knowing her life could end at any moment. She watched in horror as the masked man stepped closer, each movement tightening the knot of terror in her stomach, realizing she was completely at their mercy.